PodSaaS, where we're putting the SaaS back in sassy. Sponsored by Leader Pro, where you can book demos with target customers on demand and fill your sales pipeline instantly.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of PodSaaS. I'm your host, Chris Shang, and today we have Hubert. How's it going, Hubert?
All good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and you're coming to us from Poland, is that correct?
Yes, that's where I spend most of my time, but I'm actually traveling for business. I'm dialing in from Germany.
Oh, wow. Okay, got it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business? Also, a quick elevator pitch and who makes a good customer for you guys?
With pleasure. So and what we do and what we have been doing for the last 6 years at Neton is building technology that allows our clients, online platforms, financial institutions, or online merchants to better, more precisely understand users that can be risky to them. So effectively, we deal with online fraud of various sorts, and there is a lot of innovation coming from the darker side of the internet associated with how can you extract money, sensitive data from these platforms. And our job is to really equip our partners, our clients, with the automated tools to identify threats as they come. And given the constant evolution of these threats in their nature, we need to be really agile and powerful, thanks to leveraging machine learning, for instance, to be able to identify such anomalies and stop them whenever they appear.
Got it. And
from the customer perspective, ideal customer profile, I would say any business that is growing is introducing a lot of innovation around how they want to interface with their customers, what kind of user journey is being displayed to them, because that's effectively where fraudsters will be trying to extract some value for themselves. So a really broad target group.
Is there a particular size of company that you would start working with, or is this more larger enterprises, or do you also work with smaller, like earlier stage hyper growth startups?
I would say that probably at the very inception of an online business, there are other priorities than dealing with sophisticated fraud. So by no means I want to discriminate the ones that are just starting. We are often working with early stage companies, but to be very transparent, we want them to concentrate on the most important operational issues that they are facing. We do have a lighter version of the product to cater to the needs of the early entrants to the online game. But predominantly we work with medium and large stage or large size businesses.
Got it. Okay, cool. So definitely want to dive more into how you ended up starting Nethone. I know you started off in management consulting, and so how you make that jump from there into then starting your first startup essentially. We want to definitely dive into that. So. But before we do so, we have a thing called rapid fire questions that we like to do just to get to know you as a guest a little bit more personally. It's nothing too crazy. Questions are pretty straightforward. But if you're up for it, we can just dive right in.
Let's do it.
Awesome. First question, super simple, but do you have a favorite entrepreneur and or startup story? And it can be one of the same or different.
Yeah, I would like to. It's actually a very tricky question. I'd like to say like Elon Musk, everyone would like to be Elon Musk, but pragmatically speaking, only Elon Musk can be Elon Musk. So
sure.
My more convoluted answer to this question would be, I would really like myself in 10, 15 years from today to be my favorite entrepreneur, because this is something actionable that I can work on. So I try to set the target and my perception on things that are attainable to me, and obviously be inspired along the way by several people around us.
Awesome. That's a good answer. That reminds me of like Matthew McConaughey. He says that his hero is himself in 5-10 years, and he's always chasing a version of himself.
Probably Matthew McConaughey is much further along the road, much more successful than me. For me, I would say at least 15 or 20 years from today.
Yeah, fair enough. Second question is, do you remember what you wanted to be as a kid? And as a kid, I mean like 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, quite precisely. Actually, I wanted to be a a car dealership director or like manager. I really loved cars, like since I was very young, and I had this expectation or perception that the best job in the world would be to the manager of a place where you have all of these new cars and you can drive different ones of them and try them out. That felt like a dream job.
Interesting. And do you still have an affinity towards cars today?
Yes, quite a strong one.
Got it. Very cool.
But I do not sell cars for a living.
Yeah, no, clearly. Next question is most painful experience. And this can be personal or professional, and I'll give it a little bit of context. But I think our most exponential periods of growth typically stem from being in extreme places of discomfort. And I think that accelerates the idea of us kind of finding like these pivotal moments in our lives that might transform something, but it stems from some place that, again, we gone through where it was very uncomfortable or super painful. Is there anything that you can recall that, again, maybe when you're going through it was really, really trying and difficult, but ended up being maybe like a very character-defining exercise for you?
I would say quite a few, and I hope I will not sound too negative, but the nature of what we do, or at least that's part of my journey, is that there is a constant stream of disappointments and difficult situations. One especially relevant for me was happening when COVID struck, and we were at the moment when our business was aligned towards a vertical industry that was significantly struck by the pandemic situation, and that caused a lot of difficulties. We were in the middle of a fundraising process, and effectively from one week to the next, we had to discount the close to vast majority of our active pipeline. And not only that, but also we realized that being a Polish company, we wouldn't be able to travel for important meetings and industrial events such as conferences. So we had to redefine our sales and go-to-market model. And at the same time, expectations from the current investors, lining up the new investment round. That was really challenging, because it felt like we cannot catch a break, and every day brings some additional difficulties for us. Like probably I wouldn't be speaking here with you if we didn't figure it out. But it was really in this pain, operational pain or situational pain, however we define this. It was really reassuring to see that several of my colleagues stayed constructive, and we were able to actually figure out how to turn this very low moment into set of opportunities. Obviously, that was not easy. It took us months to adjust to the new reality, but it also taught us that really, if you keep the right mindset and you are surrounded by people that have willingness to plow forward, if that's the right word, almost anything is possible, or at least there is a way to realign the stars.
Yep, absolutely. That being said, is there anything particularly that motivates you in that 25th hour? So again, what you're talking about here is, it's persistence, right? Like obviously, like when you're going through that moment, when you're talking about at the beginning of the pandemic and then facing these challenges, there's those that are going to fold up their cards and leave the table. And then there's those that stay and continue to grind it out and over again. What is pushing you, do you think, or to kind of continue on?
I would say the feeling that you are not doing everything possible, or you are that something else still can be done. As long as physically you're able to find some additional piece of energy like that. I would say that this is the strongest motivator for me. The worst judge I have, or the strongest criticism I get, is usually coming from myself. I might not be open about this to everyone or at every situation, but this voice, this inner voice that is accompanying me, makes me not being able to go to sleep. So like there is a very strong criticism coming from inside of me. I know that like even if I switch my computer off, I will go to bed or try to do anything else. It will not stop. So let's just try to improve the situation, reduce the noise in your head, and then you will be able to actually get a break.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different founders that have alluded to that same point of like feeling like that they have to make sure that they've exhausted every avenue. And I'm always curious as to like where that actually comes from. You know, like do you know where that character trait comes from for you? Because it's not inherent in everybody. And I think it's like certain life experiences that leads us to that. And some of these founders have, you know, different life experiences, like, you know, that they grew up with. And just curious if you've ever thought about it or if you've ever pinpointed where that came from.
Yeah, actually, I did, and I was trying to let's say reverse engineer this problem. I believe it's a feature. Some people think it's a bug, and it makes me like skew my work-life balance towards unhealthy territories. But it's I believe it's a feature for a reason, and the best answer I arrived at so far, I'm not saying it's a final answer, is that I'm really motivated by a philosophy of minimizing frustration, meaning that I really created this concept in my head, but I would really not like to be frustrated when I'm, let's say, at an older age and I'm looking back at my life and trying to analyze what kind of chances and opportunities I worked out, which ones I really gave up about and stuff like this. So a very strong source of criticism and energy for me is really looking at very individual decisions from the perspective of what's the likelihood that I will actually regret it in 25, 30, 40, 50 years from today. And that creates this and different perspective of risk reward profile of actually what it means to live a life and maybe even if let's say short-term or medium-term consequences might not be optimal from the perspective of a 75-year-old sitting at the porch, hopefully in a very nice place. It would be actually something fun to remember. And I've been tracking or tracing this back since I was actually quite young, and I realized how quickly the time is passing and why mathematically every additional year makes you feel that time is accelerating. And this is a simple arithmetic realization. I remember I was turning 6 years old and I had this eureka moment for myself. Obviously nothing very impressive, but I realized, whoa, I'm 6. So I'm probably, let's say, entering or coming close to 10% of my very productive life. And like, what did I achieve? I'm only 6, and that created this spiral of thinking around what frustration will be when I'm not 12, but what happens when I'm actually 60. So I would really find, my best answer for now is really this frustration minimization philosophy.
Interesting. Super interesting. Okay, I want to come back to that a little bit, but before we do, my next question is maybe centered around that idea of like minimizing frustrations. So is there anything that you personally go to in some of these stressful moments to decompress? Do you do any like meditation or journaling or writing or anything creative? Do you have any other outlets that helps you kind of recenter yourself?
I like solitude. It might sound very weird because but actually I like having these discussions with myself and trying to analyze, and actually, especially if I go on a ride, again, back to the cars are a big part of my life, until I really enjoy taking a pointless ride around the city or around whatever situation I'm at, or going for a run, or effectively allowing myself not to be distracted by additional source of information. Okay, you could argue that if I'm driving, there is a lot of information coming my way, but I can somewhat position myself as a passive receiver of it. Obviously, I need to somehow, at a certain level, interact with this, but really going to a situation in which it's just me, myself, and I thinking and then playing with these concepts and thoughts and trying to organize them and trying to align them, playing with my life philosophy of minimization of frustration and really trying to solve the problem. That helps me. So that would be the step one. Usually I follow, and then the second one is actually going to spend some time with my wife, not at all discussing what I just processed, but actually contextualizing some of the problems I was solving and spending or experiencing different kind of moments to put the problem I have just been tackling into a different perspective. So this is my soothing or coping mechanism for everyday struggles.
Yep. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think everybody has a little bit of different versions of what that might be. And then what I've found is that a lot of these times, whatever it is that your go-to coping mechanism is, it helps to disconnect from the problem that you're trying to solve for a few moments. And when you come back into it, a lot of times even, or while you're in that separated moment, you end up solving the problem or coming up with a more efficient or optimal answer because that you've given yourself, like, I guess, the grace of having time to be disconnected from it. Interesting. The next question is, as a founder, you, especially in the early days, you tend to wear a lot of different hats, right? And like you manage all different departments and all different types of functions. So has there been a skill set that, in your previous career, you never thought that you would do, but you ended up loving and or hating a particular skill set that you've picked up along the way?
It's difficult for me to judge whether I'm effective at something, like that. The history will tell whether we are effective. But for sure, I was like tracing back my life history. Let's say starting maybe at age of 21 or so, I have started a path of stepping outside of the comfort zone of staying just with myself or solving a problem or working on something just by myself. It might be cultural or history, like the matter of how we are taught certain things. In Central and Eastern Europe, I was always inclined towards, let's say, problem-solving sciences or actually subject. Like there is not so much teamwork, especially when I was going from my educational path in primary school and high school. Like that is really predominantly based on individual contribution, and I really enjoy this, and I have always been enjoying figuring things out by myself. But at a certain stage, I realized that in order to build something really impactful, like you cannot be just by yourself. And the entire educational path, I don't want to say went through the window, but I realized sooner or later, or better sooner, I had to step out of my comfort zone. I actually had an opportunity to move across the world and spent half a year in Singapore very early into my studies, and that was obviously a culture shock and a very strong experience in many ways, but also in terms of like learning to work with different people because the educational system was really built the business school around like teamwork and cooperation, especially coming from various cultural backgrounds. And that inspired me to actually do another set of studies. Went to a business school, and over a few years, I really was stepping outside of my comfort zone in this regard, and that after I graduated pushed me towards management consulting career, which was really all about team contribution and not really solving problems by myself. So I would say, like, if you would ask me when I was 18 or 19, what I would be doing, I would most likely attribute myself to some sort of ultimate problem solving individual contribution job or task. And as you mentioned, like with so many different hats, I had to become a people's person. I'm still working on several problems as an individual contributor, but I would say if you look at my split of time, I'm contributing individually much less than I would have ever hoped, and I believe that's the only way to go forward. So I need to keep learning, and I would by no means I would say that I'm already in the like I didn't achieve a new comfort zone within this constant interaction with others, meeting people every day. I don't know, I meet 5-10 people and have to quickly build relationships with them. Or for me, again, back 15 years ago or so, it was almost incomprehensible. Like that would be a terrifying perspective. So it's just very interesting for me to see how quickly you can adapt and like how, despite being older and older, how much strength there is in an organism to really adjust and adapt and learn new skills if you are regularly facing new challenges.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is, do you have a bucket list? And if so, what's one of the more ambitious items on that bucket list?
Oh, there are so many. Actually, there are so many. Then there may be things that I can share because maybe not everything is it would be put into the right context. I would really like to arrive at a stage in my professional career that quite objectively, and when objectivity is always relative, but let's say quite objectively, I could arrive at the opinion or evaluation that what we've built or what we've been building has an objective positive impact on the economy. There are so many businesses that are great, they are flourishing, but they are not necessarily pushing us into the right direction as a civilization. And my ultimate, again, going to minimization of frustration, like it's not necessarily around being the richest person in the world or being the smartest person in the world or having this or that. It's really having this relatively objective perception that the big things that I was able to do actually are making us one step closer to something better and not necessarily neutral or in worst case worse.
Good. Last question here before we kind of talk a little bit more casually about your story, but it's the idea of legacy. What kind of impact do you want to leave on this world before you leave it?
I mean, that probably sounds very tacky, like to leave a place a little bit better than it used to be, especially with so many negative trends happening around us. I guess more pragmatic aim here would be to maybe influence some of the people that can be observing what I'm up to or what we are doing as a group of professionals, but actually long-term wise, hard work and really investments into not trying to cut the corners, but fundamentally do things better and putting this precious time and resources into doing things better can pay off. I believe when I'm observing younger individuals, I have this tendency or feeling that and unfortunately the startup scene with VC fueling the acceleration of the turns, like rounds become quicker and quicker. I believe there is this implicit expectation that you need to build a unicorn very quickly. Like it's not about building a great business throughout your life cycle. Like the best guy or girl in the room would do it like in 18 months or so. And I believe that's creating wrong fundamentals and it misaligns expectations of the younger contributors that are joining the market and the economy. And I would really like to position, let's say, the example or what we do, that it is really okay to maybe do it fundamentally better, but maybe fundamentally slower. It's not a justification of our individual path, but there is a trap. Again, back to frustration. There can be a trap in trying to cut the corners, because then you might be forgetting about like enjoying the ride and really trying to be less frustrated with some of the decisions you're making because you need to accelerate certain things. I mean, we see a lot of temptation for that, and I believe that it would be great to leave some good examples, some stories that could be read or listened to. But actually, there is a lot of fun by doing things fundamentally better and not necessarily trying to accelerate life, because like at the end of the day, there is just life.
Cool. That's it for the rapid fire questions. But wanted to dive into here, around your journey to starting Nethone. I saw that you worked at Boston Consulting Group, so you did management consulting first. How did you arrive to the ideation, let alone making the leap into Nethone? If you can kind of walk us through the steps of like how you transitioned out of, ultimately what was comfortable, stable, into an unknown territory for the most part.
So a little private side note is that I've been working on my little projects like throughout my teens and adult years. And I've done a ton of very let's say presentable things. We've built an online booking platform for sports. I was selling razors online. I was dealing with text messaging systems. I was importing water carafes and filtrating systems from China and distributing them on campus. I was doing a lot of things to learn what actually makes people to buy stuff from you. And obviously that was always, or for many years, done as a hobby, as a way of experimenting with supply and demand and how the world of business can work. So that's a side note. But during my management consulting days, I spent a lot of time within financial services space. And the fundamental observation that I took from these days, apart from learning how to work with big clients and how to solve problems at scale, and how let's say you can reuse certain knowledge across various cases. That was a great school of doing stuff and being fundamentally right at doing stuff. But the observation I derived from this experience was really how fundamentally weak financial services, big retail banks, it's like 2012, 11, 12, 13, 14, in Europe at least, were at understanding their online customers. It was already a stage at which large online retail banking institution would have 1 million plus active users within the online and mobile channels. And when we were advising some of these players for merging with another company, or one bank was acquiring another bank, there was always this topic of what do we do with this IT system? Do we migrate one to another? And like what we can derive about this. And so there were a lot of work and exercises around trying to figure out how things work and what we will lose and so on. So like for me, the eye-opening learning was that back then, they were really far from being able to leverage any insights coming from the data that was sitting or could be sitting at their disposal. So for me, that was this perception that needs to change. Like there's so much inefficiency in terms of usage of data and understanding online users. And obviously, in a few years' time, it became evident why so many fintechs were born and were so successful at replacing parts of the value chain that online banks or conventional retail banks have been able to do. So that feeling stuck with me. And then there was a very coincidental event, because I was invited by by two of the co-founders. Later, we became partners at Neton. But one of the days I was working on a case at management consulting, I received a LinkedIn message saying like, "Hey, your profile looks cool. We just would you like to come and talk?" And I didn't know anyone. Like I didn't know this person. I didn't know the company that they were representing. What really stuck with me was this building. And another side note is that I have always been very interested in real estate. As a very I was building some algorithms for spotting arbitrage options for commercial and residential real estate. And since it was a very famous building in Warsaw, where I was living at that time, I really decided to go for the meeting just because I wanted to check out the office. It was this very, very interesting tower with a lot of, let's say, pioneer technology around how the elevator systems are working and stuff like this. So I went for the meeting, and it turned out to be two guys that really had a lot of ideas, and we started chatting. And 6 years later, here I am.
Got it. Well, can you walk us through kind of like the early days of getting to kind of some semblance of market fit, right? I think like it's sometimes, when you look at the stats of having a startup, one, raise any kind of outside venture money, two, surpass the 3-year mark. I mean, the odds are stacked against you, right? Like I think it's less than 10%, definitely less than 10% of companies that start off get to that stage. So what do you think was different for you guys? And can you walk us through anything like milestone wise that you remember reflecting on, where there were maybe like these mini wins or mini aha moments where it started to give you guys the confidence and started seeing momentum?
Actually, I would say what helped us, and I would recommend to anyone who, even if they are not coming from Central and Eastern Europe, trying to build a cybersecurity company to conquer the global markets, is really pragmaticism and trying to reverse engineer what needs to happen to make it work. So for us we have a bunch of very smart people at that stage. This is like early 2017. We believe that there is a gap in terms of what technically online fraud detection prevention solutions are able to ship, in terms of pure understanding of what kind of data, what kind of attributes about the user session they are acquiring and how they are doing this. So we were extremely bullish about the fact that we have something new and something better. But then, looking at the gigantic market, sitting in Warsaw, Poland, very pragmatically, we realized all the odds are against us. There is a lot of Visa, MasterCard, Amex money put on into companies that are dominating the space. There is the entire Israeli cybersecurity scene overflowing with venture capital to build the next champions in the field. So what we realized is we need to do our research, and again, not to cut corners, but to be very pragmatic and effective at what we do. We spend maybe a month on figuring out where in the online transactional market, geography-wise, use case-wise, the problem of online fraud is the most pressing here and now. And after triangulation and a lot of expert interviews and a lot of desk research, we arrived back in 2017. That was online travel agencies in Latin America and especially Brazil. And sitting 6,000 miles across the ocean in Warsaw, Poland, we realized we need to get a customer that is coming from Latin American market, ideally Brazil. That was my travel agencies, test our technology, because that's where we see the upside most evident. We didn't know anyone there. We didn't know how to do it, but we decided we need to put everything on the chip, because if that will be our reference in power. Something that we later started to call passporting our reputation, because we knew that if someone will appreciate what we've built, it will be someone from this space. And everyone else was talking about how difficult it is to fight fraud in this particular niche of the global market. And that's we were doing obviously a lot of outreach and pulling the networks and trying to come into contacts. And then effectively, sooner or later, we found after a few months a company that was willing to do this with us, free of charge. For a few months, we came in. Obviously, we are a cloud-based solution, so we didn't have to install anything there, but we needed to travel and we needed to reallocate significant resources. Almost all of the resources we had. We ran the POC, and the results were really impressive. And obviously, the only deal that we wanted to get out of this is to be able to go to one of the conferences following this proof of concept stage and show the results, bring the client on stage and say, like, listen, everyone was trying to solve this problem. This is this company from Eastern Europe, and they actually did it, and they have better results, and that's how it works. So for us, this aha moment was obviously figuring out very pragmatic approach to what needs to happen and then executing on this. And then from this, it was much easier to get the ball rolling. And coincidentally, because we were exposed to international markets from day one, it helped us with the local bias of being stuck with our region or local market. Because effectively our number one or first customer was culturally key and almost all options you could think about very different from us. So it also put this client centricity as a notion. Obviously, we're very far in terms of serving the customer in the right way and stuff like this. But that was the very critical moment, and from there we were able to get the ball rolling, and have this conviction that actually being pragmatic and if you really want to do something and you focus your resources on this and you have the right, let's say, fundamentals for that, it can work.
Got it. Last question here is going to be, as we round up on the hour, is going to be around where do you see Nethone in the next 5 years?
I would like to see Neton as a product, as a group of professionals that build tremendous experience and expertise, supporting larger and larger volumes. Like today, we are talking about, let's say, 100 millions of online events that are being protected by us every month. I would like to really see the map of our coverage and the use cases circling around the world, almost filled, so that what we built and what is so unique about this is supporting this objectively positive mission of making internet a little bit more difficult place to fraud. Because if we believe that the entire universe is driven by incentives, for me it can be minimization of frustration. For someone else it's something else. But if there is more and more at stake, more financial resources, more financial flows, more sensitive data, there will be more and more fraud. And this fraud will be becoming more and more sophisticated, because within this group of fraudsters or fraudster wannabes, there will be stronger and stronger competition for the vectors of attacks, as we call it, that are more lucrative than others. So this ongoing sophistication of fraud will be driven by growing or intensifying competition among fraudsters. And that's why you need to have tools that are able to technologically compete with or deal with these frauds. So it's a very dynamic problem, and we would like to continue with our positioning as this most sophisticated technical player in terms of identifying technically sophisticated fraud. And the number one feedback that we could receive and the testimony that what we've built is relevant is that it will be used by more companies, many more new use cases all around the world. And that's where I would like to see us. And I would say maybe one additional aspect that that is very important for me personally, but hopefully also for many of my colleagues, is that objectively, after long days and weeks, we really feel that what we are building, and hopefully it will be a great and very successful company, there is this positive impact on the civilization, and hopefully it stays with us, and this story as an employer, as a company to join, very compelling.
Awesome. On that note, I want to say thank you so much, Hubert, for joining us today. It was great to hear your story and your journey. And we hope to you guys all the success in the world.
Thank you, Chris. It was a pleasure. The questions were really interesting. So hopefully the answers were not a waste of time of your audience. It was a great pleasure to be part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us.